Hello, welcome to Bloom Art by SW, or welcome back. I'm Shanaz, some people call me Shaz, and we're going to be painting this daffodil. Let me go through the supplies I'm using. A size 6 brush, any small round brush will do, and a size 2 small round brush. These look like the silver black velvet ones, but they're not. They are very similar. I'm going to be using my Shinhan PWC range, and the palette I'm using is actually from Core, QOR. I just really like the palette. So, well, it's a tin and a palette. And if you saw my video the other week, I showed you how to transfer this image, and indeed any image, onto watercolour paper. So I used this paper, which is 100% cotton paper. It's from Baohong Academy watercolour paper pad. I think it's absolutely brilliant. It's cold press. I absolutely love this paper. So let's get started. I'm going to just wet this first petal. Don't want to use a shed load of water, which is why I'm using smaller brushes than what I normally use. So I'm just wetting the area first, and then we're going to add some colour to it, and I'm going to use lemon yellow, and I've just realised I haven't got any colour made up, so just very light colour, and then just add that to the water, and that will spread nicely. And we're going to do exactly the same with each petal. Okay, so we'll go on to the next petal. I have sped it up ever so slightly, just because there is a lot to get through to get the effects that we get at the end. But you are doing exactly the same with each petal. Let me know in the comments how you feel about tutorials sped up like this. Do you mind it, or do you prefer it to be in real time? And I'll make sure all the colours are in the description box. So I was going to do the petal next to it, but I didn't want it to bleed into each petal, so I've actually gone to the petal next to it. So I've left that petal for now. Then take your smaller brush and get a little bit of a darker colour in the yellow and orange range, and then just add a tiny bit like this, and it will spread nicely because we've waited for the water to sort of dry a little bit, but it's still damp / wet. So the colours, when you add a second colour, it will just blend nicely on the paper. We haven't mixed the colours on the palette. It's sort of mixing on the paper, and you get a much nicer, softer effect. So I've sped it up again. We're going to do exactly the same with each petal. So exactly the same. Blend it all in nicely on the paper, like this. But like I say, please do let me know what you think to a tutorial like this, because if it's not working for you and it's too fast, then there's no point. I'll do a different step-by-step guide because it'll be too fast otherwise. But let me know what you think. Also, the pencil lines, normally I don't leave them this dark. I've just kept the pencil lines in so that you can see what I'm doing. I'm doing the centre of the petal now, exactly the same way, adding some water in, and then just adding in a bit of colour and then blending it all nicely on the paper. You can use a putty rubber just to soften the pencil lines a little bit, but even if you can see the pencil lines, everyone's different. Some people don't mind it, some people do, so it's just a personal preference. So I'm just going around the edges with a slightly intense orange colour. I'll put down the actual colours in the description box. I'm really bad for knowing the exact colours, but I will make sure they are noted in the description box for you. It just gives it a bit more depth as well when you paint it like this. I'm just mixing up a tiny bit of green, and I'm keeping it quite light and watery to start with. And then I'm just going to do the stem. Like so. And then I'm just going to do the leaf in here as well. If you have struggled with transferring this, or you don't want to do that, you just want to get straight into the painting, I will leave a printable outline of this daffodil in the description box. So I'll leave that there for you, and you can download that, print that off, and then transfer it onto watercolour paper. If you don't want to put it on watercolour paper, that's fine. You can still download it, print it off, colour it in with pencil crayons or pens, whatever you prefer. But I will make sure that's in the description box for you. If you did want to donate something as a thank you, I do also have a buy me a coffee. If you did want to do that, absolutely no obligation whatsoever. It's just an option if you did want to do that. So it's Mother's Day on the 30th of March in England. The rest of the world, I found out it's on Sunday, the 11th of May, but for some reason the UK is different. So I'm doing this petal now that I hadn't done. The only problem is, because I've just done the stem, I'm going to leave that little bit that's touching the stem. So if you've done exactly the same, just don't fill that in with watercolour just yet. Wait for the stem to dry. Exactly the same way as we've done the other petals. And then we'll come back to that bit. So this is actually the first layer as well. I did leave it to dry for about 10-15 minutes, and then I came back to it. So I recommend you wait for the layers to dry, because otherwise it will all bleed and you won't get the nice effect that you'll see at the end. So this bit, the flowery bit, or whatever you want to call it, the bit on the daffodil that we haven't painted, exactly the same way, put down a bit of water and then just go around it again with a slightly darker colour, ever so slightly darker. And then we'll just go on the edges. You can make this as detailed or not detailed as you want. If you're an absolute beginner and you've not painted like this before, then you paint it how you feel comfortable. You can use the wet on wet technique, put the water down and then put a bit of the colour down like this. And then you can just leave it at that if you wanted to. I'm just going to take a bit more of the orange and just go round the edges, just to make that stand out that little bit more. And then you've got the depth and the definition of the centre of the flower and the petals. So if you see what I mean, you can start to see the areas of the petal and the areas of the middle of the flower. And if you paint it like this, if you look at a daffodil, you get the lines on the daffodil, or they look like lines. And I'm just using the smaller brush to create that. It just gives the illusion of lines within the petals. So just carry that on, follow the drawing around, and you literally are repeating quite a lot of what you're doing, but with a bit more intense paint with each layer. And then just add in a few bits in just to give it some depth. So we're going to do the bit that we left on that petal. I'm just going to add a bit of water and then a bit of paint so that that blends in. Just on the edges there. And then we can start doing the second layer on the petals. I'm just adding a bit more intense colour towards the edge of the petal and then just blending that in. I think I've made it a bit too yellowy in comparison to the other petals. That's okay, it will still work. So we will start on this petal now, the second layer. I'm just adding a bit more paint where the lines are and then a bit more water. So we're going to blend in a bit more of a second layer and start bringing it to life a little bit. Just a little bit of the darker colour towards the edges. And then I'm just going to use the brush to blend that in. So don't put too much colour on, just a bit more. I hope that makes sense. And again, use the pointy part of the brush to blend that all in. And then exactly the same. Once again, I know I'm repeating, but that's what watercolours is. You are literally doing the same thing on each petal. And that, oh, excuse me, and that's how you get the effect. It's all starting to come alive a bit more, the colours and the difference between each petal is all starting to stand out a bit more. Same thing, put on a bit of water, a bit of paint, blend with your brush. I hope you are finding this useful. If you did want to like and subscribe, that would be absolutely fantastic. I don't have an exact schedule of when I do upload things. So if you do want to subscribe, you'll get a little notification of when I have uploaded something. And again, I've sped some of it up, as you can see. And then we will do our third and final layer. You don't have to, it's an option there for you if you did want to add on another layer, but it just makes the daffodil pop, or make the painting pop, as it were, just stand out so much more for you. And I'm just doing the centre now, the centre of the flower. I'm using the bit of green that I made up earlier just to use that green right inside the flower. And then just around here, just to make these bits a bit darker, but not too dark. The shadowy areas. So I've gone in with a touch more colour this time, and I'm painting it in the same way. So I'm putting the colour down and then just sort of creating lines with the smaller brush, the size 2 brush, and then just sort of creating lines right inside the flower. And then that is really starting to give it depth and making it look a lot more 3D. And I'm just doing the same thing on the outer petal, but just not as dark. Sorry, I've got my hand in the way there, so you can't see all of that. But I am literally doing the same thing. There we go. You can see now. So I'm just going to go in with a bit more paint now, not so much water, and just going over the areas that need to be a touch darker and start adding in some shadows. Again, I did wait for all of this to dry for the final layer. So again, just wait. So I'm going to do the edges and wait for about 10-15 minutes for everything to properly dry. I'm watering behind the centre of the flower, and then we're going to start adding in some shadows. Again, you don't want too much water. Use the size 2 brush or the smaller brush you have, and then just start adding in a bit more of the paint. Do you see what I mean by it's a bit more, it's giving the effect of the shadow? Blend it all in like this. Don't cover the whole of the petal. You still want that yellow to come through, but it just gives it a bit more depth. And again, it's optional if you want to do this. You don't have to do this. This is what I'm just doing, and I'm just showing you how to bring the daffodil to life a bit more if you'd like to. Spend some time on it. I know it's taken a little while to do, but it really does give a really nice effect. And if you are making it for your mum or you're making it as a gift, you want to do your best. So don't rush it. Take your time. Enjoy the process. Exactly the same with each petal. Put down a little bit of water like this using the small brush, and then add a bit of colour, and then blend it all in nicely. So I'm using the brush to create the fold of the leaf with the darker colour. So it's just curved like that. If you want to watch that bit again, you can. If that's something you want to look at a bit more, I can do a tutorial on that. But it just makes the leaf look a little bit folded. I have sped it up, but you are doing exactly the same as on the other petal. And then work your way around each petal, do exactly the same thing. I've gone a touch bit too dark with this. So what I'm trying to do with my brush is I'm using the water, clean water, rinse your brush, and then dab it on the towel, and then just remove a bit of the paint, but you still get, I feel like you still get quite a nice effect. So I'm going to do the fold on this leaf exactly the same way. Use the brush to create the curve. It's not something you have to do, it just makes it look like the petals curved over a little bit. But you don't, if you're not comfortable with doing that, I can do a separate tutorial on that if that is something you'd be interested to see. And again, I have sped it up ever so slightly. I hope it is okay for you. I've put quite a lot of paint there, so I'm going to get my brush and blend that all in. I think I have done a touch bit too much, but this is good. I'm glad you can see how I fix that. Again, same thing, use the brush, clean your brush with water, dab it, and then just use your brush to sort of move the paint around a little bit on the petal. It still works, it still turned out really well. And just be careful not to touch the bit that you've done, but that's worked out okay. And then we're just going to do the last two petals. Exactly the same way. And then the final petal, just to bring it to life a bit more. I'm just going to use this green just to go in with the final darker areas, just to define the centre of the petal a bit more, and just to give a bit more shadow around the bottom of the inside of the flower. Again, it's not something you have to do. I've just done it just to make it stand out a bit more. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope you did find it useful. Please do leave me a comment on your thoughts on this. Did you have a go? Did you not have a go? Is there another flower you'd like to see? And I will attempt to do that for you. But yeah, please do let me know. I am on Instagram as well if you wanted to send me pictures, at Bloom Art by SW. And yeah, I'd love to see how you got on. I'm just mixing up some green just to put another little layer onto the stem and the leaves. So just slightly darker, not too much. I've just added a bit more green to that, to the leaves and the stem. Just again, just to give it a bit more definition. And then a bit here, slightly darker at the top, and then a bit lighter at the bottom. Sorry, I didn't realise that was cut off. And that is it. That's the finished piece. I ended up doing a background, but I didn't hit record. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.